Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining this morning. The purpose of this event is to provide insight and information on multi-factor authentication, which is one of several cybersecurity requirements that the insurance industry is requiring us to obtain or to put in place in order to get cyber liability coverage. The other thing is this will be an interactive session, so by all means, raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, and I'll acknowledge you as quick as I can. Lou likes it to be interactive, so we'll make this interactive so you can ask questions as we go through the presentation. The other thing is I hope you find this beneficial and useful. And then any participant, I've looked at the participants. It looks like we're all GMIS members for the most part. But if there's anybody on the call that's not a GMIS member, I'll provide my contact information. You can reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help you, go through the process and join NJ GMIS. It's a professional organization of New Jersey government IT leaders. And if you join, I know you'll find it extremely beneficial. With that, let me introduce Lou Malagrana. Lou is gracing us with his ransomware t-shirt, which is the driving cybersecurity or malware that's behind what the insurance industry is doing. Ransomware activity, as everybody probably realizes, has increased over the past couple of years, and the level of sophistication has also improved over the years or become, more of a threat. Lou is the co-owner, vice president, and chief technology officer for StarNet Inc., StarNet Solutions Inc. And Lou will be our presenter today. StarNet is a Farmingdale, New Jersey enterprise. They went into business in 2001. Prior to StarNet, Lou has worked with other firms, two consulting firms, mainly in the areas of wide area networking, local area networking, architectures, network security, and network operating systems. And then, Lou has been in the business for a long time, as many of us have, since 1991. He's been guiding, troubleshooting, and assisting clients, with a variety of technology needs and technology problems. According to the bio, I see Lou also says he dabbles in vintage cars, which is interesting. And like this session, Lou frequently provides training sessions for government and commercial entities on a variety of technologies. With that, I'll turn it over to our presenter, Lou, and welcome.
Thank you, John. So some of you already know me, and yes, I did dress up with the ransomware t-shirt today. I left the tie and suit at home. Matchbox cars. I do dabble in old vintage cars. So I'm going to share my screen, throw up a PowerPoint presentation. It is themed, what I thought would be appropriate. I'm going to cut some of the slides out that aren't really pertinent to this, but it is geared for this. So today we're going to talk about some ransomware, some of the important aspects of it, how to defend against it, some of the recovery things you need to know, how your insurance is affected by it, and how things have changed a little bit. John and I had a good discussion the other day about it, and just the way things have evolved with ransomware from where it was a few years ago to where it is today. So let me bring this on screen. Let me start it here. Okay, so I'm going to let John monitor the chat because once I share this, it might be a little tricky to go. All right. Okay. Can everybody, let's see if this is, okay. me see if I can bring this up. Why is this not coming up the way I want to? You guys are getting the whole PowerPoint, right? You're not getting the, why is this not coming up like that? Come on. Okay. Can everybody see this now? Does it seem to be kind of okay there? All right. So ransomware. All right. This is probably one of the most real and scariest words we find today in the IT world, not only for IT support professionals, but for government companies alike. You guys have a special place in the world for ransomware attacks because that's your government. They love to come after you guys. Ransomware has absolutely exploded since it's been around for the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years or so. Some of the statistics I pulled looking recently, some of the stuff that's up there. So, for example, this 2/3 of mid-sized organizations worldwide were targets of worldwide. That's not just the United States. And average ransomware payouts have a 5-fold increase. Comes from a report from Sophos. So ransomware is typically paid out in Bitcoin. So if you haven't used Bitcoin and you get ransomware and you decide you want to pay for it, which we usually suggest you do not, you're going to learn how to use Bitcoin in a hurry. Let's see, click in here. Okay. So in 2021, 66% of mid-sized organizations were hit with ransomware. It's up 37% from 2020. And your average were ransom payments over 800,000. So that's, if you look at that over the prior year, you can see the huge increase in it, which means what? Which means they're learning how to get in, which means they know ways to get your users to click the button or allow them access to the computer or so on. Of those that did get encrypted ransomware, we'll talk about the different kind of ransomwares in a second. 46% of them paid the ransomware, and 26% who were able to restore from backups wound up paying anyway. And I thought that was interesting to point out because they paid for the ransomware recovery, yet they had backups. And this usually comes from a result of panicking. I don't know how many people here have actually had ransomware or have gone through an organization that had ransomware. We'll talk about that a little bit, but I can tell you we've been to many of them. You're never popular because you have to give the real honest assessment of what's going on. I've seen people walk out of the room. I've seen people quit jobs. I've seen people get in fist fights. I've seen people come in completely drunk and tell their boss off. I've seen all kinds of crazy things. Then I've seen organizations actually handle it very professionally, did a really good job, did not panic, and were able to do a recovery. Yeah, it's typically a longer process than most people realize, but I need to get rid of this. Okay, sorry. Get this out of the way. But yeah, you will survive. Nobody has died from ransomware, not that I know of at least, and you will recover. All right. So today, about 1 in 10 organizations are paying about $1 million or more in ransomware or ransoms for ransomware, compared to only 4% in 2020, over $1 million. And you know, the funny thing about ransomware is we don't always know, or actually nobody really knows what they get. They'll tell you we have 600 gigs of data, or we have 1 terabyte of data. You know, you have to remember you're not dealing with anybody that's scrupulous. You're dealing with people that have very little scruples, if you will, or they really don't care. All they want to do is get money from you. Most of them are out of this country, and most of them actually, believe it or not, don't get shut down by their country's government. And the reason for that is because a lot of them actually, once they take money from you and they get that money, they are quote unquote taxed on that money, and they will pay that money to their local government or so on. I mean, this, you know, not all places, but a lot of places that are, like I said, they find that the United States is a honeypot of gold coins just sitting here and so on. We know about the Colonial Pipeline that happened 2021. That was fun. I was in Georgia and I took an Uber. That was $9 the first day. And after they got attacked that night, it was $52 for the same Uber the next day because everybody panicked that there would be no gas, right? That was a $4.4 million so ransom payment. That's a lot. JBS USA paid out $11 million. $11 million so that they wouldn't have a food supply. shortage or disruption. Now, did they have to pay it? No, you have a choice, but part of that is your preparation. You know, the one thing I tell people right here is that it's very important to realize that nobody, absolutely nobody is shielded from this unless you're completely cut off from the internet and you have no access to any computers. You have a standalone computer sitting on a desk in a room with no network on it. Everybody is under attack. They will go to whoever they can to get what they need. Okay. US government data, there's a rise in ransomware activity, obviously in 2021. And right now, as of the first half of 2021, it's a little bit older, but there was $590 million in ransomware related activity in the first half of 2021. That's grown exponentially. It's getting more because what happens is if you pay someone for ransomware or you let them in, they figure if it happened once, well, why can't it happen again? Right. So they will continue to trudge on if they will. Okay. So this is just I thought this was interesting. It's a little chart. This is these are the move this out of the way because this thing is right in my way. Sorry. Trying to get this out. There we go. So this is the annual number of ransomware attacks worldwide from 2016 to the first half of 2022. And if you take a look, there's 638 million attacks. It was down a little bit, then it came back up in 2021, almost caught up to where it was in 2016. And the first half of 2022 was about 236 million worldwide. Now, these are also known attacks and what gets reported. There's obviously going to be things that don't get reported. And why would that be? Well, some people are embarrassed. They're embarrassed to get hit by ransomware. They do the absolute denial that they've been hit by ransomware. Back in 2016, if you were hit with ransomware, which it was becoming more popular, but I remember people were almost treated like lepers. Oh, you got ransomware, stay away from me. Stay back, don't come near me. I don't want to catch your ransomware. Now, excuse me. Now, when we see people get ransomware, it's more like, oh, you got ransomware too? Yeah, I went through that. That was really tough. So whereas it was something new and bad, it has not gotten any better. If anything, it's pretty much gotten worse. But still, people are coming to more understand what ransomware is as more information is put out there. Does that seem to be okay? No questions on that so far? Okay, let me get through this one. Okay. All right, let's get this out of the way again. Okay. So this is something that came from Veeam software. So they took 280 IT leaders who suffered ransomware attack in 2021. So 97% not only attacked the systems, but they also tried to attack their backup repositories. Now, in the beginning, when ransomware started, it was attacking systems. It would, whatever person or whatever computer was unleashed on first, it would start with the C drive there and then move its way through the network. They didn't really go after backups at the time. They were trying to attack the systems to gain access, not only to encrypt or lock the data, but also to offer things like remote control. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. We also know that 53% of it was encrypted. And I think a good portion of ransomware attacks now are encrypted attacks. And again, we'll talk about a little bit what's the difference. Now, 34% of those 280 people who paid the ransom still couldn't recover their data. So realize what you're dealing with when it comes to ransomware. You're dealing with people that they're unknown, they're invisible to you. It's basically a guy in a mask that you may not see that could be in another country, or it could be next door. You don't really know. And you don't know, what they're going to, pay us a ransom, you get your data. There's no guarantee. There's nothing that says you're going to get that data or that you're going to get some, all, or it's even going to be, unencrypted. You're basically negotiating with data terrorists is what you're negotiating with. Okay. So not to say that there's may not be a case where you may need to pay for it, but if you prepare properly and if you prep yourself and your organization, then you can move forward with hopefully minimizing the impact and having a good defense. Okay. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. Get out of there. So, ransomware, it's not something to be taken lightly. It is real. Like I said before, everyone is susceptible to it, despite the amount of efforts you've exerted, the products or service you purchased, and the money you spent to protect against it. So I've told this story probably countless times, and it absolutely blew my mind. There was a hospital out west, or a hospital system out west, and they invested over $1 million into securing their hospital between the perimeter devices, new firewalls, IPS, IDS, new antivirus, and so on throughout the hospital. And it was a big deal. It was a huge project, and it was publicized, and look what we're doing to protect, data and so on. And yet they still got ransomware. And when they went down and did their forensics, which is not easy to do in a ransomware situation most of the time, because everybody's trying to get you to, get back online. So you literally have to get rid of the bad data to put the new back in. What they found is somebody took a phone that they downloaded a free flashlight. A lot of people do that. And when they took that phone to work and decided they needed to charge it, they plugged it into a network connected device with a USB cable, and they began charging it. When that phone connected to that device, that flashlight unleashed ransomware into the network. It took that hospital down. They had no computers for 2 months. It was a nightmare. They didn't get operational partially for about 6 months, where they could kind of start working and get everything cleaned up. And it took almost 2 years to really get back online. So the smallest thing can bring in the worst nightmare, right? It's never underestimate things like allowing people to plug their phones into your USB ports, or allowing them to use your Wi-Fi for their internet. You can control what you have control over, such as your desktops and servers and equipment. As IT professionals, you can also control what users bring in. Unfortunately, a lot of times we give people the benefit of the doubt and say, yeah, let them use the Wi-Fi. It's okay. It keeps them happy at their job and they work better. But what we don't realize is that these individuals also have the ability to bring something bad into the network, whether it's their own phone or laptop or USB stick for that matter, and cause havoc into your network. Okay. There's a very, very important thing that I've seen taught over and over. And a lot of times we see it taught to police, about taking, a USB stick from someone and plugging into a computer, for example, to get data off. So they go to a scene, somebody says, oh, I got everything on video. I copied it to this USB stick. Here, now you have your evidence. And the officer will take it and load it into his computer, and they boot it, and it's a virus or it's ransomware, either intentionally or unintentionally. People throwing USB sticks onto the ground outside, especially in parking lots. So, oh, there's a USB stick. That's cool. This looks like a neat one. Let me see what's on it. Or let me see if I can use it, and not realizing that you can unleash, basically hell into your network. So you have to be very, very careful. And we'll get into that a little bit too. Okay. Ransomware not only just infects Microsoft Windows, which is where it used to be. It does get to Linux. It does get to Apple products. It even gets to VMware. And if anybody here, it's a little different when I'm doing this over Zoom versus in class, because I always ask for a show of hands. But if anybody here uses devices from like QNAP, for example, there is ransomware directed for QNAP devices. There is ransomware directed for storage area network appliances, for NASs. NASs are actually a lot easier to hit because they're inexpensive and a lot of people have them, and they basically take it out of the box, they put it in their office, and they say, hey, here it is, let me set it up, not realizing what what you actually can do with it. So we'll talk about that with patching and so on, but pretty much anything, your Android, your Apple iOS for your phones, your iPad, anything that's electronic that you can interact with, even your IoT thermostats on the wall or your home Nest system, all of these things are susceptible. Matter of fact, you probably won't find as many reports for this, but there's plenty of incidents where people went to the store, bought cameras. I'm not giving a brand because I'm not sure, but like a Ring camera you put on your front door, or a thermostat from Nest, or something of some mark like that, some device like that, and it's IoT. And it's a very basic Linux system. and they've actually allowed people to get into their system without them knowing it and into the house and do things onto the network because they weren't protected. They just basically made these things. Hey, here's a really cheap camera. You could stick it in your house. Okay. So it's important you just keep these things in mind that just because you can buy it in a store and it comes in a shrink wrap package or you can buy it on Amazon does not mean it's secure. Does not mean it's secure. With ransomware, the FBI has put the stance out that you should not pay. Don't pay terrorists. Of course, everybody's situation is unique, but if you pay once, realize what's probably going to happen. You pay, you get some of your data or partial because they'll give you some of that. Because then what's going to happen is they're going to come back again. They're going to try the same tactic or something else, or they're going to leave what we call secondary unexploded bombs in the network. And we'll talk about that as well a little bit. Okay. So if you do pay for your ransomware, the FBI has put out that 85% of your data or less of your data on average is returned. These are not scrupulous people. Again, remember that. But again, we don't have to panic. So let's talk about that a little bit. And that's just to give you the reminder. That's like my grandmother gets, don't trust these people kind of thing. All right. Okay. So there's tons and tons and tons of ransomware. You guys have probably heard all the big ones like WannaCry, or maybe you had some of your own, but we could be here all day. We could write them out over a roll of toilet paper and it still wouldn't be able to put them all. However, there's two main types of ransomware. Okay. There's crypto ransomware and there's locker ransomware. Crypto ransomware seems to be, at least what we've come across, the one that seems to be hitting people harder, where it encrypts all your files and then it requires a key to decode the encryption, like a Captain Crunch decoder ring when you're a kid. If you don't have the right key, you can't figure out the message. Locker ransomware will lock your users out of their files, but it doesn't encrypt them. However, the same situation where you need the key to get it. And when you pay your ransom, supposedly they give you the key. Now, if you're asking me which one is worse, honestly, neither's better or worse than the other because you don't have access to your data. Okay. They're serious infections. You're not going to be on Google looking to decrypt them. You could try as you may. There are some companies that do sell possible decryption services. There's no guarantees on it, and you will pay the fee for it. But these are really, really, really important to understand that when you get hey, my file looks weird and I can't really read it, that's a sign that there may be something going on. Okay. I don't know if there's any, John, we're okay on questions or anything. Everybody's good. Oh,
No questions at this time,
okay.
Lou.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
a lot of comments, but no questions yet.
Okay. Anything I need to reply to yet or not yet?
Not yet. No.
Okay. All right.
Not
So
yet.
ransomware, we know it gets in many ways. It gets in through emails, it gets in through websites, it gets in through you getting a phone call and allowing some remote control. But how about ransomware as a service? Everybody's like, what? Yeah, that's right. Ransomware as a service. Okay. So ransomware as a service, we'll give you the little definition, right? So ransomware as a service, subscription based, that enables affiliates to use already developed ransomware tools to execute ransomware attacks. So what happens is you can find someone that sells ransomware as a service, pay them a monthly fee or a yearly fee, use their ransomware tools, and they'll get a percentage of what you buy. It's no different than as far as a service, anything else you've seen. It's just a derivative of software as a service, yet it's not scrupulous. It's bad. So people ask me, well, where can you get this stuff? Well, it's not as hard to find as you think. Please do not subscribe to this. It's a bad idea because one, it's illegal here. In other countries, it's not so illegal. But the companies that do this, and I've said this before, and sometimes this catches people off guard, is it's not, we're not living in an age where guys are sitting in their basement like back in the day when war games came out. And there's a kid on a computer with a modem dialing in, trying to break into your system. Now, what we're living in an age of a company, an actual company of employees with a CEO, with a CFO, with a receptionist, with a lobby, with an IT department, with a sales department that are selling ransomware, viruses, things like that. Not in this country, but outside this country. And again, they're allowed in such countries to thrive sometimes because a percentage of that goes back to either the government or taxes or whatever it may be. Now, most companies that are good, I mean, most countries that are good will not allow this to happen, but it does happen. So you can go Google and look up videos and see these, people walking a camera through this place and show you that you're actually walking through a lobby and it looks like a regular building. It probably looks no different than coming into my office, except it might be bigger, and you'll have people in there and their whole job is to help people use these tools to hack others. They have a tech support line. Hey, I don't know how to use this tool. It's not working. No problem. Give us a call. We got a 1-800 number or whatever it is. We'll walk you through the process. Okay. So these are real and they've existed for years. Before ransomware, it was just viruses or renting computers off the internet. I told John the other day, there was a study years ago. It was like 36% of the computers that were connected to the internet at the time, it was maybe 5-6 years ago, were available for hackers to use to hire at any given time without people knowing. So imagine 30-some% of the computers connected to the internet were available for use by hackers. Because I don't want to connect from my computer to your computer necessarily and cause problems, because there's always a trace, right? There's a digital trace. But I want to connect maybe to John's computer, and then I use John's to connect to Lee's computer, and then I use Lee's to connect to Leon's computer, and so on, working my way through the system so it's more difficult to trace. Okay. This is very real. This is really bad stuff too. Okay. All right. So before we get into how to recover or respond against ransomware, let's talk about some of the things that you should have. And feel free to add to this because the list can be more extensive than here, but keep the bad people out. So some of the things we want to do, we want to know your network. We want documentation of your key systems, your configurations. Diagrams are great. They're fantastic. It's great to have them in digital. There's no reason why you can't print them and lock them in a safe. And I'll tell you why in a minute, why we suggest that. You should have phone numbers, your contract numbers, serial numbers of your key systems, your firewalls, your switches, your servers on hand, locked in a safe with a break in case of emergency label. Keeping support phone numbers to key vendors for things such as your firewalls, consultants, antivirus, and backup vendors is important. Do not wait until you can't get to the internet to try and find them when the place is melting down. Very true story. We had a customer kept everything, all their passwords, and a password file system on their network on a server. All you had to do was log in, put your code in, and you could pull any password. This company got affected with ransomware badly. Well, when we got done, guess where all their passwords were? Infected. We spent 2 weeks having people trying to remember passwords, writing down. This was a customer we got pulled into at that hour. I should have said no, but we did it. And trying to find their passwords. They didn't have any phone numbers. They couldn't get to the internet on their systems, right? Because they couldn't get out because their DNS servers were down. The firewalls were up, but they didn't have enough experience. Well, how can I change my, how do I change this to a static DNS? They didn't have these kinds of things. And you don't want to be doing that when the whole place is melting down. Everybody's going crazy. Okay. Because the usual response to ransomware is panic by most people. And then we don't think straight. We don't think straight, things go on. So it's good to keep them in a lock safe with a key that's available. If you're going to put them in somebody's office, all right, in a fireproof box or safe, make sure that person's available. If they're going to go on vacation for a month, make sure you have a key or make sure you have access to that room, because it's great when you have it, but when the person's in Tahiti and nobody can get a hold of them, you're not in any better spot, right? Okay, so make sure you have this stuff documented. Okay.
Lou,
Yeah.
we do have one question.
Sure.
A question was asked is, why is it imperative for IT and OT teams to unite against ransomware? And Leon McBride has asked that question. So if you'd like to speak to that.
Wait, Leon asked, I'm
Or
sorry.
you want to elaborate on your question, Leon?
Yeah, I just had mentioned about, the differences between the IT and the OT, which is, SCADA.
Mm-hmm.
So, and how important it is for those two teams to work together in reference to ransomware.
Yeah. So I'm assuming some people on this call have SCADA, maybe most have some people on this call. And in some cases, some people may do both, or you may have separate teams, but your SCADA systems being your very critical systems for what they do. You guys need to know, like there's nothing better than a team. There's not one person in this world that's going to fly in and fix all your problems, right? I tell people all the time, having teams working together, knowing what's being permitted and being allowed, having more eyes, more experience on any situation is really, really important. Because when I first started StarNet, there was a 19-year-old kid that they hired to come in to do Windows servers. And he was always, the last one that they ever asked any information from. One day I sat down with him and actually talked to him. And this kid at 19 years old knew more about Windows, Active Directory, and things than any of us in that room. He was absolutely brilliant. And, kind of not taking his advice and experience because, oh, he's young and doesn't know. It didn't help us. We actually got into a situation where he actually came in and saved the day. So having your teams of people working together, again, more eyes, more hands-on, I think is really, 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 really important, especially if you do get into a ransomware situation, because again, that's when most people panic. And that's when, the blame game starts a lot. Your team may start to fall apart. So it's good to have a very good working relationship with all of them. I don't know if everybody here runs SCADA and your IT together. I know some of you do. But if you have a separate team, you should get to know them and you should work with them.
Well, I sort of kind of mentioned that because you mentioned the Colonial Pipeline, and the Colonial Pipeline, it has an office business unit, and then it has the other part.
Right.
And, the risk value in that is so huge. And if one isn't talking to the other, that's what happened to them. They were out for a very long time.
Excellent point. That's very true. And that Colonial Pipeline was pretty scary, to be honest with you. It really was. Watching Uber prices go up 5 times in over a few hours was crazy. But you're right. You do need to know, one hand should know what the other one's doing, right? You guys are in the business to keep systems running, to keep the business running. Somebody said to me years ago, IT has gone from the geeks in the room to the rock stars, because you're the ones that everybody needs to come to now when they have problems to get them fixed. And, the reality is everybody that is in IT is a rock star. I bet you're all famous. I'll bet pretty much everybody in your environment knows you when there's a problem. They probably all come to learn your name if they haven't learned it before. And it's very important to work together. You definitely need to do that. Now, if there's situations where you guys have, confidential data, where if I'm working with Leon, for example, and I'm not privy to that, that's fine. I shouldn't, but I should know that if Leon's doing SCADA and I'm doing the network, that what are control systems in between for keeping them separated? Are we physically separated? Do we have a firewall in between? Do we have 2 firewalls in between? Who has control over that? You guys need to, everybody needs to know that. Not you guys, everybody needs to know that, because you need to know what to do when, things start to go sideways. But yeah, but that's a really good point, Leon. It really is. Your things that you should be doing is making sure you're getting rid of your old operating systems. I know this seems like a give me, but we still have customers out there of Windows XP. I have a customer's got Windows 98. Why? Because their software hasn't been updated yet. I mean, I know everything's money in the end, but you really need to get yourself up to Windows 10 and get yourselves up to the later versions of Windows 10. It's important. Those old operating systems are so easy to take advantage of today. And that does include your Windows servers around 2008, your Windows 2003 servers. Don't think because they're old, they don't want them. Those are key and easy to break into. Okay. Passwords. I know this seems very antiquated, but what I just explained to you with the customer, they kept all their passwords in a repository that got ransomware. Get your passwords on a paper or printout or something in a fireproof safe somewhere that somebody has a key to it. You can use the cloud if you like, but if you can't get to the cloud, right? Everybody's, I'll just run down to the Starbucks. Okay, that's fine. You can put 400 people into the local Starbucks and try and use their DSL line to get out. You're going to have problems. So make sure you have copies somewhere. But what does that mean? That means if you're changing your passwords regularly, this document needs to be updated. And that's part of, hey, we need to do this kind of maintenance. The 2 things that are always fighting against us in IT are money and time, right? We never have enough time and we never have enough money. Okay. Keeping your firewalls up to date regularly. Now, doesn't mean just go start throwing firmware on there because it comes out. You need to make sure things work, and there should be a process for testing and proving what you're putting in is going to work if you do an update. But if you guys use Fortinet, There is a critical patch that came out, I think the day before yesterday, that was like, hey, you need to do this. It needs to get done. So we immediately went to that and, started patching those firewalls. Come on. Okay. Using effective antivirus and endpoint defense and response on workstations and servers. If you're using antivirus that's only signature based, it's not going to stop you against ransomware. Ransomware is typical ransomware defense is behavioral based. It starts looking for encryption really, really fast. So if you use certain products, and I'm not throwing names out, I could just tell you ones I know for experience, but if you were to use something like Sophos, its Intercept X is made specifically for ransomware. When it sees 3 files get encrypted within, a millionth of a second, it puts a halt on them. It doesn't allow any more, and it restores the original versions. So ransomware itself, so if you're just using antivirus, you need to make sure that what you're using also has ransomware protection. Okay, do your studies. Look, you guys are in GMIS, ask your fellow GMIS people, hey, what do you use? What's working for you? We see all kinds of stuff out there today. We've seen people go on Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, you name it, it's out there. It's out there, but ask them, what do they use? Because they can give you real experience as opposed to the salesman that comes in and says, hey, I'd like you to buy, CrowdStrike. And you go, oh, that's great. Oh, why? Well, look at all these great features. Oh, this is great, because his idea is to sell it and make his commission, right? Okay. Using multi-factor authentication for devices, including servers, desktops, laptops, tablets, not just VPN. We'll discuss this in a bit. But part of putting multi-factor authentication, not only into servers, not into VPN, but into desktops, is because if I'm a bad person or a hacker, all right, or a threat actor, or I'm trying to release ransomware in, and I get a hold of John Tugman's login name and password, if he's using multi-factor, my chances of getting in have been diminished severely, because his multi-factor will require him to use a secondary device, such as a phone with a code that changes, or a token that code changes. If I don't have that in hand, or I can't get that from John's mouth or somebody that has his phone, I'm not getting in with or without his password. Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Okay. Consider intrusion prevention. I should have put also intrusion detection systems. They look for these things on your network. They look for suspicious activity. If you're using network monitoring, make sure it's actually watched. Don't just say, hey, we bought this network monitor and check it out. We can see all this stuff, but nobody's watching it. Okay. Don't just rely on email notifications. What happens if your mail server gets downed, ransomware, and you can't get mail in or out, or if you can't get to the internet? Now, a lot of people I know have gone to 365, and that's great. But if you can't get your email because you can't get to the internet, you're not going to get those notifications, or you shut your phone off at night. You need somebody watching it, at least, some of the time. Okay. Use effective operating system patching. If you're still using Windows SUS, which is, I'll tell you now, it's far from perfect, it's not really effective. There's tons of third-party options out there that do work. Lots of them, even ones that can patch machines that are not connected on a VPN to your domain. So if you send everybody home to work and 4 people are VPNing in, but I have 300 people in the field, there's actually patching systems that actually will work to those machines, cloud-based, that will patch. And the one thing that goes beyond WSUS, which is really just patching Windows type or Microsoft products, is they can patch other things. They can patch Adobe, they can patch hundreds or thousands of software out there as well. Okay, it's really, really important. The biggest breaches occur because people don't protect their systems, right? Okay, backups on and off site. So the basic one we tell you is the 3-2-1 system. 3 copies of your data, 2 locations, one of them should be cloud. I'm sorry, 3 copies of your data, 2 on site and 1 on cloud. I'm sorry, I just did that wrong. So for example, I back up to, I'm sure a decent amount of you guys are probably using Barracuda appliances, I remember. So I got a copy of my Barracuda. Okay, that's 1. I have Barracuda sends to cloud. Okay, that's 2, and there's my cloud. But you should have a secondary backup on site, whether it's a Barracuda replicating to another Barracuda, or a secondary system. If you're using VMware, maybe you're using Veeam or using Altera or something like that, because you're going to want to have those extra backups just in case. You can't rely on one thing, and you should be testing your backups. All right. Put files in, destroy them, try and restore them. It doesn't mean it's going to work when, push comes to shove all the way, but you need to have something. It's really important. If you just say, hey, I got backups going, especially if you're using tape and you're not replacing those tapes regularly. Oh, I've been using these tapes for 12 years. They work great. You go to put those in for restore. You're going to find they're probably not going to work. Okay. And look for expertise from trained and experienced companies or individuals in ransomware defense, not just your friend of a friend or as I said to John yesterday, my son's Boy Scouts, father's cousin's roommate, because there's a lot of people who come out there that know ransomware and they don't. You want to look for people that have actually been through it. Your fellow GMIS participants are fantastic. They can give you insight into things that they went through, hurdles that they overcame and things like that. If you guys, anybody knew Janice from Brick MUA, I know some of you did. Janice did a discussion on how they had obtained, how they got Emotet and what they went through. She used to tell the story and I could just feel like how depressing it was, but they came through it. They made a plan to do it. And then, but she talks about the things that they learned and what not to do in the future. Okay. The more important than anything else in all this is training your users. I know John and I had a really good discussion that John does regular training for his users. You need to train them. You need to, if you use things like KnowBe4, where you're doing email training on what not to click and so on, that's fantastic. Sit your users down, explain to them that when, Michael Smith from Microsoft calls and wants access to their computer because they have a bug to fix, that they're not to take those calls. Do not give out information. Giving out information can really cause some major problems, right? Okay. So some of the other things, so defense and preparedness, I know we kind of went through this, but I just want to kind of reiterate here. So checking your backup reports daily, either do it or have somebody do it, or at least weekly, check them, make sure they're there. Consider doing more than one backup per day. So if you can say, hey, we can survive a full 24-hour loss or 12-hour loss of data, great. But there's tons of products today that work in conjunction with your backups that can do snapshotting of your systems during the day. There's storage systems that could take pictures of your stuff in less than a second and restore in less than a second. So you don't have to wait for your backup appliance to restore over several hours. Okay. We had Brick MUA has a piece of storage that somebody accidentally wiped out half the file server. We restored it 1 second, and then we booted it up in less than 60 seconds. Exchange server took a patch, it died. We just restored the Exchange server less than 1 second. There's things out there that can do this stuff. Having multiple backups and multiple devices really works. So having more backups, more than one per day, allows you to recover and have less data issues, if you will, or loss of data. Having viable endpoint protection, we just talked about that a little bit, right? Multi-factor authentication, so important. Is there anything anybody can do today without multi-factor? Can you get onto Google without multi-factor into your mail? I don't think you could do anything without multi-factor. The cellular, the cell phone has just become basically your personal security and identity device, right? We kind of need it to do everything, but we can use tokens. We can use other forms for doing that. Layered security. Don't just say, hey, I put a firewall in and it's ready to go. We've talked about this in other classes where, are we doing layer 3 firewalling? Are we doing layer 7 firewall? Layer 3 just basically says only allow port 80 in or out. But ransomware can find that port 80 and disguise itself as HTTP traffic. So we want to look at layer 7 where it goes inside and says, man, this isn't really a web call. This is actually ransomware or a virus. Okay. Come on. Air gapping systems. So if I'm saying any terms you guys don't know, feel free to ask, but air gapping systems, keeping systems that are absolutely critical separated, physically separated, no access to them unless you walk into the room and sit down in front of it. Now, not everybody air gaps their SCADA completely and put firewalls in to separate them and so on, but a true air gap system has no physical connectivity between devices. So you may have your SCADA system in one room, but there's no connection to the internet and it's never connected to your network. Why? Well, somebody has to get into that room in order to get on there, or has to bring in a USB stick or a drive in order to put stuff on there. Okay. Having separate VLANs and firewall access lists between zones and departments. I think this is something that's come up for you guys that are becoming New Jersey GIF. GIF in short is that they're saying, hey, you need to separate your engineering from your marketing, from your tax department, from your accounting department, because putting them all on one subnet is an issue. I know Jim Pakinowski went through this just last year, I think it was, separate them all out. I mean, it's work, it's different subnets and so on, and it's preparing. Reviewing your systems regularly. You have to check your stuff. Don't just assume because everything's working that it's good. Okay. Things will sit in your network. They can live there. Remember SolarWinds? They sat there for 2 years reading their data before they got them. Okay. Stuff sits out there. And remember, security is never cheap and it's never easy. If it's cheap or easy, it's probably not secure. Okay. Do your penetration testing. Yearly is good if you can do it, at least. More or less is fine as well. Train your users. Social engineering, very, very important. Explain to them. Email preparedness, things like KnowBe4. I know you guys use Sophos, Barracuda. They all have their own phishing campaigns you can do. Pop-up training. What does that mean? When a thing jumps up on the computer, they go to the website and says, your computer's been hacked, click here. Teach people not to click that. It's very, very important. And of course, don't forget about Patrick from Microsoft, who's calling to help your user with his computer problem that he's unaware of. I do this for a living. My mother gave up her credit card and her social security number after her and I have had 50,000 discussions. My uncle's done it 3 times. I told him if he calls my office one more time, I'm going to disown him from the family. He's called constantly. Oh, this guy told me I have to let him into my computer. And I'm like, how many times do we have to go through this? Teach people not to click those things. It's important. They get the phone call. Anybody get the phone call from Amazon or Social Security? If you didn't order this $1 million package, click 1, right? And then you get on the phone. They're trying to get your information. People need to understand those things. They need to understand what is legitimate and what isn't, because they will take advantage of it. During COVID, this stuff was flying through stuff. We were dealing with more of this than we were getting people on remote access, because everybody was just, hey, we need to get people to work. We're just going to let them all in. And they were just basically giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying you have to, hold a cross to everyone like they're a vampire and keep them away, or a silver bullet for a werewolf, but you have to know, what we need to look out for and train people to do so. Remember, loose lips sink ships. So we don't want to give out any information. Do not give out social security. Do not give out passwords. Do not give out IP addresses to anyone. If they need that, have them put it in writing. Okay. And have them make sure you know who you're dealing with. Okay. Make sure you have your insurance for incidents. So you're going to need to meet your insurance company's requirements for GIF. If you guys want a lot of information on GIF, I could tell you Bob McQueen helped do that. So he's a great resource among people I've gone through it in GMIS. This is actually a pretty cool URL, and I can put it into the chat. I'll put it into the chat for you guys. For you guys after, but sorry, I didn't mean to click that. But basically, it lists all the counties and the regions of New Jersey and what your requirements are there. Okay. All right. So response and recovery. If you get ransomware, the most important thing, and John actually said this to me the other day, is don't panic. It's absolutely the best thing I can tell you. You want to panic because it's the worst car wreck you've ever been in with your computers, but don't panic. Okay. Start to assemble. Okay. Start disconnecting. If you know a system is affected, disconnect it. Pull the network cable, turn it off, pull the power cord. If you have to get off the internet, pull the firewall, disconnect your cable modem, whatever it is you need to do. If you're not sure of the damage, pull the power to the network switches before it starts running around. They infect so fast. They start local on your C drives, then they move to all shared drives they can find on the network. There was a place in Mercer County. One of the servers got hit, and one of the sheriffs had taken a ransomware class, and she went in, and first thing she did, she pulled the power right out of the switches, and it stopped it and held it to one machine, which was great. Best thing she could have done. And then we dealt with it. Let's see. Isolate your infected machines. Pull the cables. Do not let people use them. We get calls, hey, we can't read the files. Like, don't touch the computer, pull the pet network out. Well, I have to get my work done. Don't touch it. No, I just got to do it. Don't touch it. That machine, you want to tell them it has basically it has corona, leprosy, and flesh-eating bacteria all at once. Don't touch the keyboard. It's the most important thing. Okay. Once you get through and you're starting to go through some of the stuff with ransomware, you have to remember that even if you catch what you think it was and what you got, there's a lot of secondary, tertiary, unexploded bombs that they will leave in your network. They're sitting there watching. So, we clean up the ransomware, everything's good, but there's things hiding in the closet, reading your data. You need to do a very thorough investigation. If you haven't done it, my best advice is look for experienced people that can help you. Did I just do this backwards? Sorry. My mistake. Sorry, I ran the darn thing. Okay.
Lou, let's take a moment. We
Sure.
got we have a few questions.
Sure.
One question, well, a comment is, multi-factor is a good protection. However, it's expensive.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
So sure. So if we're doing multi-factor for just Office 365, because I think a lot of people are on it, Microsoft has its own included multi-factor you guys can use, which doesn't cost you anything more than the time to set it up and the headache of teaching your users who don't want to use it how to use it, right? But if you're looking for desktops and so on, yes, it can be expensive. One of the more popular ones out there is Duo by Cisco. It's very good. It's not the easiest thing to set up if you haven't done it before. It takes sometimes a few rounds to get familiar with it. And it's typically subscription based. But there are other systems out there. And if you guys want, I can put a list together of ones that are actually, there are some that are less. Actually, Tammy Davis and Tom's River uses one. I forgot the name of it. She had looked into several and she said the cost was actually really good because she has a very tight budget. She thought it was really good. That's out there. So there are ones that are less. They're not necessarily monthly subscriptions. There's also devices you can invest in. If anybody's ever used anything like a YubiKey, which is basically a plastic key or a USB stick that goes into the computer and you touch it, it's a one-time fee. It's $50 per user. And of course, if you have 10,000 users, that's not cheap, but it's $50 per user and it lasts forever until somebody breaks it. So yeah, it's not cheap, but remember, anything secure, as I said before, it's not cheap. It's never cheap and it's never easy, right? If you want to be secure. So yes, like I said, money and time are the two things we have fighting against us. But I can tell you this, that if you do get ransomware or you do get infected with something like ransomware, it's going to be 10, 50 times more expensive to get out of it between your time, your sweat and tears. And a lot of times we watch places that go through heavy ransomware, not government, but commercial. We see them go through within less than a year. Nobody's there anymore. Either they've quit or they've been removed from their responsibilities because people start to lose faith when you get ransomware. It doesn't mean they should. It just happens. Oh, we got hit. Our IT guys didn't do their job. And yet, well, they wouldn't let me get a multi-factor. You didn't let me buy multi-factor. Well, you didn't tell me this could happen. The communication and teaching people is really big, but it is not cheap typically, but I can send you guys lists of stuff if you want to take a look.
Yeah, there's another question. This is from, the educational area.
Sure.
The question is this individual's K through 12 individual, and they're asking, is anybody aware of any schools that are using MFA for student logins? I am not. I don't know if anybody else is aware of any schools that are using MFA for access to their network, et cetera.
That's tough because schools, depending what age they are, especially their K to 12, right? And teach a kindergartner MFA is not usually going to happen. In that scenario, we got to do the best we can. I mean, even with all this stuff, it doesn't mean you're not going to get ransomware. You still have a potential to get it. So the idea is get the teachers, get the people in the IT systems and the servers really protected. If you're going to do that, then student machines shouldn't be on the same subnet as your servers, right? That you're doing your business. There should be something that's in between that can control access lists. Hey, they need to do file shares. Great. So you open up, port 445, 137, 135, 138, 139, but we don't open up Telnet. We don't open up FTP. We don't open up HTTPS, those kinds of things. But yeah, I don't know any schools offhand. That's a really good question.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm the one K-12 guy on here, so.
That's all right. No, that's
Yeah,
okay.
no,
I mean,
that
that's
was
a
a good
very
question.
valid question. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, as I've
Yes,
yet to, any IT directors or school net admins, I've yet to find anybody in surrounding districts. Now, I don't think anybody, faculty and staff, obviously, like you said, but.
Yeah. Students, it's tough. I mean, teaching an 18-year-old versus teaching a kindergartner, it's definitely not easy, but I'm just going to go into the assumption, which is probably a bad thing to do, that if we've got younger kids on computers, I'm assuming maybe there's some kind of software that's kind of protecting them so they don't browse out to, whitehouse.com or whatever, or, some porn site or something, so it kind of keeps them out of there. If not, that might be something I'd worry about first before multi-factor. But I'm going
to start out wearing the ransomware t-shirt to work and just walking around, so. Once you send me one, Lou.
But this, Yeah, this
Yeah.
this one
I'll
actually
just-
came. This one actually came from ARC, sir, when I was at GMIS International. Believe it or not, the guy's like, "You have to wear this." I'm like, "All right, I'll wear it at a webinar." But if we have extras, I'll be happy to send you one. It's no problem.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that is a good point.
Yeah, the other one is a question about the difference between encryption and MFA. We could
Sure.
probably speak to that for a while, but if you want to comment on it, Lou.
Sure. So encrypting your data to protect it, right? All we're doing is we're taking this product, we're running it through a machine with an algorithm, and then it spits it out in a way that hopefully nobody can read without the key to that machine. As long as there's a key, there's always a potential to get it, right? Whether it's unlikely or not, but there's always a potential to get it. So if I'm controlling that and somebody gets me on the phone and says, "Hey, Lou, it's your Uncle Vince, and I need that key to get that encrypted." "Oh, here you go, Uncle Vince," right? And it's not my Uncle Vince. I've just given up, right? I've just given up the farm. It's not easy to get into systems, but sophisticated people's, find a way. I mean, you see people giving up tens of thousands of dollars to people over the phone, buying credit cards or gift cards, walking down to the bank, they're getting yelled at, things like that. So it can happen. With MFA, the difference is that key that allows you in is constantly changing. It's usually a 30 to a 60-second turnover time. They used to be 60, and I've started to see a lot of them go to 30, which is sometimes a little short for people to do. But you have to have that device in hand, whether it's a phone or it's a token. And although, yes, somebody can get my phone. So if somebody walks by my desk, swipes my phone because they got paid by somebody outside to give them my phone as the IT director, and they've got my login and password, now they've got my phone. Sure, they can get in, but is my phone locked, right? There's all kinds of things. My phone should be locked. If my phone's not locked, these are things to teach users. They should not be using their phones unless their phones can be locked. 4-digit code, 6-digit code, whatever you want. A lot of times we turn that on 365. People are like, "Oh, wait a minute. This guy's getting a prompt on his phone. He can't use it because he hasn't locked his phone." You're damn right he needs to lock his phone, because I had an engineer of mine. He worked for me for 2 weeks, bought a brand new phone, left it on the bar. He was out drinking and somebody stole it right off the bar. He was fortunate enough to find it on eBay 2 days later and got it back with the police. But people steal. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, we just expect people not to do that, and they do. So you can encrypt your data, nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But I wouldn't use the Microsoft encryption per se. It has a tendency to get a little fluky at times if you want to use something outside of that. But remember, if you are encrypting your data, some of your antivirus systems like Sophos uses ransomware protection. If it sees you encrypting data and you don't tell it not to ignore that at the time, it'll block it from encrypting the data. But I think both of them combined is a great combination, but if you have a choice of one or the other, I like the idea of MFA, but again, it depends what we're doing. If we're just encrypting a folder for maybe human resources because we need to keep salaries protected, then we probably don't need MFA for that. But if we want to protect, hey, somebody gets on this computer and remote controls it, like I told you, it was 30-some% of the computers are available for access at any time for sale, then you want MFA to keep them off there. They maybe get on your computer or so on. A lot of people don't realize how many keyboard loggers they get into the computer when they download that free application. Try and keep free things off your network if you can. That's a good rule to live by. But yeah, I don't know if that answered the question or not. Hopefully.
Yeah. Just from my perspective, I look at MFA and encryption as just extra tools in your security defense system. So if you have MFA and then you're also encrypting your data on the back end, that's added defense in depth, so to speak, where you've added extra protection. So I look at them as complementary cybersecurity provisions.
Yeah, that's true. The more defense weapons you have, the better chance you have of surviving or keeping the attack small, right? We want to keep our attack surface as small as possible. I'm sure everybody here uses a firewall at this point. At least I hope they all use a firewall at this point. But, does anybody here use deep storage firewalls? It's a firewall behind a firewall, two different ones. I've got a Cisco in the front and a Fortinet in the back. It's more complicated. It's more expensive, but it's a heck of a lot harder to get through as well. That kind of thing.
Okay. Well, we've run out of time, so we've gone over a little bit, but everybody seems to be interested in the presentation. So, but if we could wrap it up, Lou,
Yeah.
since, to respect everybody's time.
Yes. Sorry about that. I kind of
That's
my
all
phone
right.
blacked
No,
out.
I
didn't
know
see
you already warned me about that.
it. Make sure whatever you're doing, if you get ransomware, don't panic. Prioritize your needs. Get plenty of food around. Try and keep the alcohol away because people don't do well with alcohol. But check out anything with this stuff. Check out with your fellow GMIS members. Nothing wrong with asking people outside for help. We do it all the time. Our number and our phone number and emails up there. And some of you guys already know we are, but your fellow GMIS members can give you real life experience and things like that. That they'll tell you the real deal because they have nothing to profit from it other than to help you, fellow GMIS members. But thank you guys. Like I said, I know some of you guys, thank you guys for not heckling me too hard today, or I didn't see the chat messages yet. I might have to look at them to see. But if you guys have any questions or anything, by all means, you can email or call. Happy to discuss things with you. If you need a list of solutions, we can send you lists of vendors you can look at. We can help you with them. We've been doing this a long time, very, very long time. And, our goal is really to get out there and help people. But Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lou. Is there any other questions that anybody would like to ask? At this time. Okay.
I think Sean is looking for Lou's email.
Oh, here, I'll put it up here.
Okay.
Yeah, I can put it in the chat if you guys.
Thanks, Bernadette.
I missed that, Sean. So sorry.
Yeah, the one that's up there, star support, it goes to everybody in my team, just so you know. So God forbid I'm in a basement in a police department and can't get it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lou.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay. Hey, Lou, this has been great. I would really appreciate you taking the time, and appreciate everybody that was able to join us today. It appears everybody on this call is already a GMIS member. So
Nice.
But if you're not, by all means,
spread the word. Spread the word. Spread the word.
Lou is a big champion of GMIS, so that's a good thing.
I love GMIS. It was one of the most unexpected blessings we ever ran into. It really was. We did so little with government, and then GMIS is just, I've met so many nice people. I met so many friends, and just it's just been a really good experience. It's nice. There's a lot of exchanging. Yeah, it's good.
Okay, that's great, Lou. Lou, again, thank you for your time. Everybody
thank you.
else, thank you for your time. Enjoy the remainder of the week, and have a nice day. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.